On this episode of the program, everything that happened this year, we discuss with Kevin Ryan, 2024. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. It's all coming up. Bye-bye.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for the end of the year. I'm going to put this out Friday, December 27th. It's your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here, and what unfolds is what we do every year, Pinky, and that is invite the one and only, the incomparable, the cosmic Kevin Ryan, and we go month by month to talk about the biggest stories from each month. And dig into kind of what was the year really about? What was it really about? Here we go. A tradition unlike any other. We are at the end of the year, and lo, what a year it has been. And so I am joined by the one and only, the cosmic Kevin Ryan, as we break down the top stories one by one through the year, month by month. Kevin, how you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm chatting with you, man. So I'm always in a good mood when we're chatting.
And by the way, for folks who are only listening, Kevin is he's in a backyard, his backyard. He's about to smoke a cigar, and he's on like an old-fashioned chair. Your mic sounds immaculate. It sounds fantastic. Good. Yeah, no, it's good. Great. But if you hear crows in the background, it is not me adding it. It is legitimately Kevin out on his backyard, which is just amazing.
That'd be hilarious if you did add that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it's like my normal adding of crows to the back of everything. So for folks who are new to the show or found the show during the election, this is something that we've done for a few years, where at the end of our calendar year, we just go month by month to the number one stories and just kind of remember where we were. I'm going to try to stay away from politics where we can, because we also did a little bit of a version of this right before the election where we kind of broke down news and culture and stuff like that. But let's start in January.
And this is also some you and I don't talk about beforehand, so there's sort of like a spitball aspect to it.
Oh, yeah. No, we're just going to roll the ball out and see where it goes. Alec Baldwin was indicted for involuntary manslaughter on January 19th, stemming from the 2021 accidental shooting on his set Rust that resulted in the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. Alec Baldwin, very, very interesting year for this guy. So he gets indicted. He later gets off because the prosecution screwed up in his case. Like, it was, he was in more legal jeopardy than I think people were realizing. And yet he ends the year doing bits on SNL. He's going to be front and center for the SNL 50th anniversary coming up in a few weeks. There's nothing that can stop Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin is unstoppable.
Yeah, don't give him a gun. Don't hand him a gun. Yeah, it's interesting. I did a piece on the Western, I think it's The Old Way is the name of it, that Nicolas Cage was in, and it came out like a little bit before then, and they used the same gun handler. And
oh, really?
Who's essentially, I mean, she's doing prison time right now, I think, or she's out already. But she did not shake the law like Baldwin has been able to inexplicably do. But she was apparently very reckless on that set as well. And like guns were just going off randomly, and Nick Cage at one point stormed off the set.
Oh, because things were so loose.
Yeah, something to the effect of like, get it together, man. You're supposed to know these are guns. Like, this is your whole thing. You're supposed to be able to handle this.
Yeah, I mean, the situation itself, really, I mean, the biggest thing that you could pin on Alec Baldwin wasn't that he was an actor. It was that he was also the producer. And some of the arguments that were being made were that it was a cheap production. They were cutting corners, and this was a deadly consequence of a cut corner. That's like the worst thing that you could possibly say about him. Now, what's fascinating to me for our kind of conversations, but sit in the middle of like the political and cultural, is that Alec Baldwin, a hood ornament for the resistance era of Trump's first term, then goes through this where Hollywood kind of distances themselves from him. He's getting harassed by people on the street. There's like a viral video of him taking this lady's phone and throwing it into the street. You know, he's always been a hothead, right?
Yeah.
But yet he's still there. There is something that is just undefeatable for Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, I'll never understand that. I mean, there is sort of like the Hollywood royalty aspect. And I should add that like for him to like go cheap on a Western is like very much in line with like the Western mythology and the way that I mean, some of the best Westerns we have came from like cutting a lot of corners, but you know, you don't
guns are something you want. You know, you want to pay to get a good gun person on there because that's
definitely
bad things can happen and did. I mean, a woman died. You know, we could be you know, fun and loose about it, but at the end of the day, there was a deadly consequence to it. Where do you think, you know, like Alec Baldwin wasn't doing Trump again when that started up? I think they have a better guy to do.
He does pretty well.
He's great to do it, but I don't know. I mean, I guess like where does Alec Baldwin fit in the post vibe shift? I mean, do we get a non-political Alec Baldwin? Like, is this an apolitical era?
I could see that, but only if we get a move towards a less political Hollywood, which I think could happen.
I think it's happening.
We're seeing that. Yeah. I think people they're either not playing it up or they're playing it down. So I think the people who are like sort of performing politically and they either didn't care or they're like, you know, in the closet.
Yeah.
Or the people who are genuinely like in the Hollywood acceptable political environment are realizing like, okay, you know, Americans have different opinions and they're coming to buy my movies.
Well, and also it's like the right is in ascendancy in terms of like popular opinion polling. And that's something that has not happened in a very long time, in probably 2 decades.
Yeah.
And so it gets harder and harder to say like, oh no, this is something that the audience really, really wants by the numbers. And especially when you look at how expensive things are and how much it is to roll out and how much is at stake now, because Hollywood itself is kind of in a moment of transition. And yet it's like, all right, so if I were to compare the two eras, and not to make this again about SNL, but like SNL after Trump wins first time, 2016, you've got Kate McKinnon as Hillary Clinton, not in character, just playing Hallelujah, right?
Yeah.
Just a very serious, cold open. It's just a very serious performance.
Yeah.
This time they actually did a joke, and I thought the joke was funny. You know, it was the cast saying, which acknowledges that they are a bunch of young liberals, like lying and saying that they all voted for Trump. That's funny. It's a funny idea that at least on one hand doesn't predicate itself by either establishing an in-group. It is like on either side of the aisle. Like I had conservatives that forwarded that to me and they're like, LOL, take your medicine. And I had liberals forwarded to me and they were like, oh, it's a funny joke. Like they did, hot Trump with like a muscle body. Like that's, I don't know.
Yeah. You and I were texting because that's an important moment. The first SNL after a presidential election.
An election. Yeah.
And my take originally was like, I thought it was cuddle puddle, but but you were right. You were right that it was like this is. First of all, it's a good joke. That's what we should start.
Well,
with.
it is a joke,
funny.
and that was my first step. It's like, did you try to think of a funny joke? Like, here's a premise: a bunch of liberals are now doing a hostage video. Funny idea. Okay.
Yeah, and I was glad they had Burr. I was glad they did Burr. Although I thought Chappelle did a great job in 16.
Chappelle did an amazing job. Well, but also you can't match what happened with Chappelle in 16 because he had not reemerged yet. He had not done a special yet. It was like there was still the mystique of him just leaving.
Pre-special?
Pre-special. Oh yeah. No, he had just signed that deal. And so this was the beginning of it. So it was like the first time that we were kind of reintroducing ourselves to Dave Chappelle, and it happens at the point that this gigantic moment in history takes place. And so like it was hard. Let me float this by you. Yes. So there's been a lot of conversation about does the left need to build a Joe Rogan, right? Which is funny for a few reasons. Yeah. Number one, the left had Joe Rogan, and they actively tried to run him into the ground. So, like that is, if there is a question mark of Joe Rogan's fealty to the left, then maybe look at the 6 months that Midas Touch specifically tried to cancel his Spotify contract. But if you're going to look at somebody who does lean more conventionally left, that is somebody that is a tell it like it is relatable guy, it's Bill Burr. Bill Burr's that dude. Yeah. Bill Burr's not afraid to talk to anybody. He passes what I would say, again, for the Democrats going forward, it's the college game day test. Can your people go on college game day? Because that is right now the most American male coded program on television. Like it is enthusiasm. It's a little bit blue, but it still has its respect for the elders. There's still the element of like, we got to respect the game. And I'll tell you what, Timothée Chalamet went on that show 2 weeks ago and crushed it. And now I immediately thought differently about Timothée Chalamet. I was like, oh, Timothée Chalamet needs to do an action movie now. Timothée Chalamet is more masculine than I thought. You need anybody in the Democratic Party that has a huge problem with courting young men right now. Anybody that you think that you want to put serious investment in, you got to be able to see him on college game day. And I'll tell you this, not to say that Bill Burr should run for office, but if you're looking at the mold,
that would be amazing.
Bill Burr would crush it on college game day.
This is this kind of taps into something that I've wanted to get your opinion on. Do we prefer comedians to be sort of slippery politically? Like I profiled a guy who's like big Trump comedian, openly Trump comedian, and we got Shane Gillis who's pretty open about it. Then we got Hinchcliffe who's like
who was out on stage.
Yeah. And then it's also part two of that is also interesting that like the open comedians seem to be popping out on the right side of things right now.
Because that's dangerous. Yeah.
No, I like that. I appreciate that. I like that. I don't care which direction they're going. I want it. I want a comedian who's like, taking on some danger. But do we prefer them to be kind of slippery or?
I mean, ultimately, the answer is we prefer them to be funny.
Yep. There we go. I was
Right.
thinking about that.
So like, that's the number one thing. It's like, are you at your funniest when you are dangerous? Are you at your funniest when you are comfortable? Are you at your funniest in whatever situation? I think that's the comics that have gotten the biggest, that have gotten the most well known, have ultimately their material and their delivery matched what we liked them to be. Like Louis C.K. was a comic that like was what he was, and then he started doing material about his kids. And he really kind of reinvented for an audience that had just kind of been a hip person that then had kids that were also like rebelling against the idea of like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful miracle. Instead, it's stuff like my kid's an a-hole, somebody who makes you late 30 minutes every single time to a pre-planned, you call them what they are, an a-hole, right? That was what kind of like exacerbated is what we wanted to see Louis C.K. We wanted to see him agitated in the same way that we wanted to see George Carlin agitated. So it's like for Bill Burr's always been the like, really? Like that guy? Like that's, you can sum up all of Bill Burr in like, really? Because something funny is coming after that.
His dad material has been really good too. It's been nice to see him become a dad. On the Red Rock special, did you see his Red Rock special?
No, I haven't. No.
He just has this, he's kind of coming to terms with his anger issues. Finally, we've watched his anger issues all these years, whether he's doing it as a joke or not. And then he just talks about how he like flipped out in front of one of his kids, and he's like, is she going to be able to be an astronaut now? Like, but he does like, it's relatable, but it's also like, it's still funny.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It's funny how much the kind of comedy mothership here in Austin is still something that people really talk about. And I wonder what the shelf life is on it. When Rogan first did it, it made a lot more sense to me that he was going to do it kind of out in the boonies a little bit. And then he wound up doing it right on 6th Street, which I think wound up making more sense. Especially considering for him, it's like, it's not ever going to make money. He's literally just running his own comedy store so he can still say that he's a comic and he can have his friends out.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether or not that kind of crests. I don't know whether or not we're at the peak. Would you say that we're at peak Rogan right now?
That's a good question. That's a tough one. Because
it would make sense if this was the peak. When people are like, "Oh, you swayed the election," that usually it's hard to get bigger than that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna like be a little bold and say he's got. Man, wouldn't that be funny if he ran for president? President Rogan.
I think he's in such a better catbird seat where he could just. Just be high and have people come to him. I mean, like, think about it like that. He told the Democratic nominee, I'm not leaving my house. You got to come to me. And the rest of the world was like, man, she should have came to that man's house.
Yeah.
They weren't like, screw, who are you, Joe Rogan? Who are you? I mean, inside the Kamala campaign, I'm sure they were, but outside when all those people are talking now, they're like, maybe we should have made it work, blah, blah, blah.
I love that Barron's like, you shall do the podcast, Father.
Well, and it's funny, as we're recording this a little earlier, it's December 16th, but the day before, Andy Bruzowitz, who was apparently the origin of the podcast strategy, he was somebody that was named in a lot of like late in the game Trump profile pieces, both positive and negative. Apparently he also was the one that was pushing for Hinchcliffe. he had a seizure on stage, apparently, at a New York Young Republicans thing last night. But the way that it was reported was that Bruisewitz goes to Trump and says, hey, I think you should do podcasts. Podcasts they talk exactly to the audience we want to talk to. You're good at doing them. Here are some that I think you should do. And Trump, like on the golf course, was like, talk to Barron. And so Barron was the one that was like, yeah, do this. And then like Aiden Ross or whatever, like the kick streamer that they
was
did.
the first one, really, wasn't it?
Well,
I didn't know that story. That's incredible.
Yeah, Logan
love that.
Paul, I think, was the first big one.
Who had Trump? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that the Nelk boys, I learned all of this. I'm not the natural audience. I have aged out of this dude funnel of content. But as I understand the hierarchy, it was the Nelk boys that do the Full Send podcast.
Okay.
They had the relationship. Yeah, they had the relationship with Dana White, and that's where they got connected to Trump, and they had him on early in the process, maybe even pre-primary, but like when things were not as popping for him.
That's such an interesting, like, interconnected, like Rogan, UFC, like all of those different aspects, like the podcasting. Like, I think, as you often say, this will be heavily discussed in political science courses someday.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, and it's having listened to a few of those podcasts, I wound up listening to the Full Send podcast because they had JD Vance on, and that was right in the midst of JD Vance being discussed as like the least popular vice president of all time, and like sub Palin, blah blah blah. And I listened to him on the Full Send podcast, and it kind of sounded like the old fraternity brother who was like 5 years out of school that came back to the house and was like talking to the brothers. Yeah, like not the one that's creepy that's showing up all the time, but the one that
I see.
He's there for a reason. Like he's there because he has business, but he still wants to stop and hang out. And he's like, oh, by the way, if anybody wants to get a job in finance, let me know. I have people to talk to. Like, it was like that kind of guy. It was that kind of vibe. And I was like, immediately at that point, I'm like, oh, there's more to JD Vance than is being made of it. So I do think that those were important. Okay, let's get to February. Mitch McConnell announced that he would step down as Senate Republican leader on February 28th. This ends, I believe, certainly in modern era, the longest tenured leadership of that conference. It now moves him into a lame duck period of 2 years where he's just going to be a regular senator. He actually wrote an op-ed today about, maintaining America's leadership abroad, which is something that puts him at odds with some of the MAGA folks. But Mitch McConnell, where's Mitch McConnell these days?
I think he's like, is he inside his shell at this point, or is he, is his head poked out?
He fell again just last week and hurt himself. So
sorry,
I think there's gonna be conversation about whether or not he should still be around. And nobody wants. I don't think he's Feinstein yet.
Yeah.
Yet, as I speak, he's not Dianne Feinstein.
Wow, that's scary.
Well, I think the problem with Feinstein was that, like, they were already hiding her as much as they possibly could, and you could not hide her. Mitch McConnell can still get out and talk to a few people. He can do a television hit. Like, he can still speak. So it's like, the problem with him is that he's just so old, he keeps falling down. Remember, that guy's been infirmed his entire life.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he beat a childhood disease. So he's never been the most robust human being on the planet. So you got to imagine that just the frailty of age is going to hit him that much harder.
So is he? What's the protocol here? Is he like stepping down in January, or this is one of the things I love, because a lot of these stories I just didn't even see. So
Yeah.
I get a chance to get the jury take on it.
So they've already announced the new leader, and they voted on the new leader. That was John Thune.
Oh, yes, I remember all this.
Yeah, so John Thune is going to take over. So he's essentially running it now, because you can't.
Okay.
It's not like, even if technically Mitch McConnell still has the keys, Thune is showing up to the office every day and sitting in the big chair,
Gotcha.
Power wise. So, yeah, that's where that is. So, I mean, he's on the way out. Although I did a thing when he fell last week where I looked at what the succession plan would be, because Kentucky has a blue governor. They got Andy Beshear, who's got his eyes on the presidency, right? He thinks he cuts a little bit of a Bill Clinton-esque figure, Southern Democrat, to heal the party, and the Republicans, like 2 years ago, passed a law that said, yes, the governor gets to name the replacement, but it has to be from a list of 3 that the outgoing senator's party gives him. So they've already McConnell proof. Anyway. Oh, gotcha. They already McConnell proofed this, because they have a super majority in the legislature. So I'm like, oh, you sly foxes. You sly foxes.
Yeah, that's clever.
March. Incumbent President Vladimir Putin reelected for a 5th term during the Russian presidential elections from March 15th to March 17th.
He got 110% of the vote.
You want to know what? Popular as ever, this guy.
Who
can ever bring down? This is, all right, I always say this whenever anybody points out that, like, oh, America, it's only like 40% of America that votes or whatever. Fine. Yeah. You want to know who has 90% voting participation? Dictatorships. Like it's suspicious. If I see that many people voting, I'm like, what's going on here? Did somebody have a gun at your head? Because you probably wanted to sleep.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the like dictatorship press is always so fascinating to me. I'm more fascinated by like the press of a healthy country, a healthy state. But it's so funny. Like it's like, oh, okay, so Vladimir Putin can lift 8 Russians over his head while he's jogging on a horse. It's just so blatant. Yeah, that was so. When did Tucker Carlson go over there? Was that before or after?
We can take a look. By the way, more Russian stuff. March 22nd was also when there was a concert hall attack. 154 people killed, 551 injured.
Good Lord.
By the way, Tucker Carlson just back in Russia.
Yeah, he was just there. That was an interesting.
That was February. February was when Tucker first went.
What did you think of that? Sorry, we're hopping back to February, but what did you think of that interview?
I was not mad at the interview. I think the interview is what it is, and every once in a while I would rather have Vladimir Putin, in his own words, say things, if even just so when some people are like, oh, well, you're repeating Russian talking points, I at least hear what he's saying as a Russian talking point.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think that gets thrown around a lot of like, well, these are exactly Putin's talking points. It's like, all right, well, I don't know. I don't hear Putin talk all that much. Like, I'm just kind of taking at people's words that are scanning Yandex or whatever, social media they have over there. The interview was what it was. The stuff that really kind of made me a little queasy with Tucker was the obvious propaganda that they had him do on the way out afterward. Like there's this thing with Russian influencers that fixate on the idea that they have functioning supermarkets. And it is one of those things that, like, I don't think they realize how much it's telling on themselves. Because they're like, it's like you have these Russian influencers that are like, oh, they say that life in Russia is so hard, but look at this beautiful supermarket. Like, this does not look like poverty to me. Like, oh, well, no, and it looks like a regular ass supermarket, but it's like,
oh, I see. Yeah.
But I'm like, you know that, like, a Walmart in the poorest county in America looks like that. like that's not like, you're too excited. You're too excited about fresh fish. Like that's not impressive in any way. Because, and it also makes me think, like, all right, you're doing that in the center of Moscow. Do you know how many of those we have in the center of, like, major cities?
Oh, yeah.
Sub-major cities, mid-major cities. Like, these are not particularly impressive. And so when they had Tucker go to the supermarket, I was like, oh. And on one hand, I got it. Because I'm like, look, I don't know how big Tucker's crew is. Let's say it's 6 to 8. Right?
Yeah, that's about right.
That's a lot of people who you're responsible for. You're the one making the call. If your handlers in Moscow are like, we would really like if you go to supermarket. It's like, okay.
You will go. Yeah.
Yeah, or fine. We'll do the thing. Like, it's your job ultimately to get them in and out. So I don't know. Some of the stuff since then, I understand that Vladimir Putin is the kind of, like, quote unquote forbidden knowledge that, like, oh, it's what they don't want you to know. And this is kind of the problem with othering thought, is that it becomes now taboo. It becomes something that it's like, well, why shouldn't we be listening to Russia in its full thing? And it's like, that's why you measure it out. So, all right, I'll reframe it. I liked the fact that the interview happened. I think it was good that the interview happened.
Yeah.
If just because you see him and you're like, oh, yeah, he's a thug. He's definitely an autocratic thug. Like, I watched him. There's no element of that.
KGB is still there.
Yeah, there was no element of that I was like, wow, we're really putting upon this poor man who's holding things together. It's like, no, he's an autocratic thug, and that's fine. Like, I don't think that it precludes the world from understanding that you have to work with him on some level. But
so I did a deep dive into Alexander Dugan. Do you know a whole lot about him?
I mostly know it from you, but please explain it again. Yeah.
So I did a dive into what does he actually believe? What's his actual philosophy?
Explain who he is.
Dugan is sort of this, I don't want to call him a mystic because I don't know he's a mystical, fascinating philosopher who's, like, well-educated, extremely well-educated. He spent time, in the West. I think he spent time in London. I think he was educated in London. And he really he does something that several modern philosophers done, including Nick Land, who's another controversial guy. But he learns Western philosophy really, really well. He learned it inside and out, and which is, like, traditionally been used to further left-wing causes. So that's like a lot of the postmodern stuff. A lot of the French intellectuals, or the post-structuralists. So, like, Foucault and a lot of those guys, but also the Germans. Some of the Germans who are a little more dubious and a little more like Heidegger. He's read a ton of Heidegger. For anybody who's read Heidegger, that's like an accomplishment in and of itself, that anybody could get through that labyrinth of beautiful words and hyphenated words. But his philosophy is, like, fascinating in that it was very clearly designed for people on the left to be like, well, no, you can't do that. You can't use that premise. You can't use those premises to arrive at that conclusion. You're not supposed to do that. So there's there's an adjutant element to him. And he also has this just philosophy that is very strange. It's like, he believes in like circular time and like the 4 eras that repeat over and over again. And he, very apocalyptic minded.
He very much has Putin's ear, right?
That
is his claim to fame.
There we go.
Is that he is speaking to Putin, and that is, when, especially for those who are very wary of Putin, obviously, the argument against, is like that, like he is a rational actor, is that Dugan is by his side, and Dugan has convinced him that he is the change agent that brings apart the apocalypse, that brings apart the next age that is inevitable, and Russia can either be at the forefront of that or it can be at the back of that, but only Putin can decide, and that would lead him to make decisions that would seem to be out of step with somebody who would say, well, look, he just wants to stay in power and make money.
Yes, and to be clear, Dugan's not a nice guy. He's sort of a nasty figure who if his ideas were to take hold, would probably be bad for society. But you can kind of see Putin courting the Western right. That was an interesting thing about the Tucker interview for me. It was like a furtherance of this strategy he's employed for a while, where he's like, look what I'm doing over here. A Russian who doesn't like woke stuff, you're one of us,
Yeah.
So Tucker, having Tucker was part of that, I think.
By the way, 2022, his daughter was killed in a car bomb.
Putin?
Dugan's.
Dugan.
Dugan's daughter killed in a car bomb.
That's terrible. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I wonder if you saw that one coming. April. We're looking at April stories now. The total solar eclipse.
Yeah.
You were in the path for that, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was beautiful, and I got to my oldest daughter. She was, she's been interested in space, and space is obviously fascinating.
Yeah.
So that's been like one of our early connections. So that was a cool thing to be able to show her. I wrote about it from the perspective of my friend Joe Papalardo, who's, I don't think you've met him. You guys have to meet. He's National Geographic's SpaceX guy. He lives.
Oh yeah.
He lives down there. So I was chatting with him about. Yeah, he was on this podcast when I guest hosted. He was one of the interviews.
Oh, gotcha.
He was just sort of explaining it, the whole thing to me, and of course I don't remember a lot of it because it was pretty jargony, but yeah, that was pretty neat. Where did you see it?
I was here in Austin. Austin had a full totality, and we were. It was like a last minute thing because it was a little cloudy, and then just at the last few seconds of full totality, the clouds passed and everybody saw it, and it was amazing. It was great. My co-host for Great Night and co-creator of World's Greatest Con, the host of World's Greatest Con, Brian Brushwood, has a big thing on his property every year called Founders Day. He literally put it on the day that it was for that event. That was the event he was building to, because he knew there was going to be a full solar eclipse with the totality in Austin. And so he wanted people to say that they'd been coming to this thing for 5 years. And then finally, this was the big moment. And it was great. It was magic.
That's fantastic.
You understand why civilizations were built on stuff like that. Like you understand why
Ritual?
there is, or just the awesome power of something beyond yourself, feeling as small as you can possibly feel when, like,
the cosmic element of it.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Like that's it. It all makes sense. It all makes sense why you look at that and you take away books and you're like, yeah, I'll slaughter kids for the harvest. It just makes sense. It's like, I don't know, man. God seems pissed. God seems pissed. Like, I better spill the blood of an innocent. Like, so we get
bring out
harvest.
the villagers. Yeah.
I know, right?
This is, my daughter really likes unicorns, and so inevitably the question of do unicorns exist has come up, and so I obviously had to make it cosmic, and I was just talking about, like, we went to a sandbox or something. I was like, see all these grains of sand. They're all over. Every time there's a beach, every time there's something.
Yep.
Each grain of sand represents at least 1 million of the planets that exist in the observable universe.
Yeah.
So and like each one represents like at least one star as well, because there are that many stars. But so my conclusion was, like, the odds are pretty good that there's a unicorn on one of them. That goes back to what you said. There is a beautiful unknowingness of the fact that we've only ventured like 1.2 what is it? Not light years, but light seconds into distance into the universe. I love that. That's so, like, it's so calming to me, and I agree that our human response to that has been to, like, ritualize it. That's I think that's part of it too. I think it's calming.
It's certainly, we've ramped up our personal intake of information over the last several decades because of technology, and part of this is something that I'm gonna write about soon. I might have already written about it by the time that you guys are listening to this, but I think in many ways there's a coming age of, this might not be the best word, but I'm going to use it, piety, that is coming to Western culture.
That's cool.
And part of that is understanding that we are never going to make peace with our information flow.
Wow.
There is only going to be a holding of space, to use the term of the moment, for something else, so that there's a limited amount for information flow, and we can curate that, as opposed to just assuming that there's an algorithm or there's a gatekeeper that is going to give us the right amount of information.
Yeah.
And so what is permanent? In society, in Western society, it's like family, faith, we're pretty much at the end of the list, right? Like there are beliefs we have, but things that like have lasted forever are not all that much. And in terms of intellectual pursuits, faith is pretty much the only one that you kind of are able to hold in your head by yourself. Obviously, philosophy and stuff like that very much are part of it. But if you look at where we're going culturally, I see more young commentators talking about how we have reached an excess of the libertine revolutions of the last 3 decades, and specifically in 3 areas: gay marriage, gambling, and weed, right? Drug legalization. These were 3 things that when we grew up, they were the kind of no-brainer. What kind of backwards world do we live in if we don't have the ability to do these things? Why does the government care if I make a bet with somebody else? What does the government care if I smoke weed in my living room? What does the government care if I'm a man and I want to marry another man? I'm not, it doesn't take away from anything that we identify as being American. In fact, it is un-American that we do not have the freedom to do these things when we are the freedom TM country. And yet, the commentators that I see are like, weed smells. Why are there so many gambling ads? There's obviously an entire cottage industry in the concept of where LGBT QIA+++ rights, even saying that has its own cultural implications. So I feel like we are at a point now where the conversations that are going to be most passionately fought are about understanding and reining in things that exploded over the last 30 years. And with that, I do think that you kind of see, all right, well then by what code? And if you're looking for available codes, faith is kind of there. This is what faith has been for. This is what religion has been for. And we've been in a very a-religious age that I think you could probably say peaked in the 2010s, when you had a lot of like atheist books and stuff like that came out, a lot of atheist writing. And now it's like, well, what was the reward? And I think, you're already seeing there's some of these. Are you familiar with the Bible apps? The Bible apps are hot right now.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Hallowed, right? Is that one of them?
Hallow, yeah.
Hallowed?
Yeah. No, you're right. That's the reference. It's, yeah.
Yeah. And when I was watching all 4 cable networks at the same time, like an absolute psychopath.
The quad.
On the quad, I would see, what's his butt? Mark Wahlberg. Marky Mark, yeah. For that app that was just like, hey man, what's up? Stay prayed up. And it was just it's like, hey, here's an app.
You're a shining star.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. By the way, that was a really beautifully woven explanation there. That was really
Thank
cool. So yeah, I guess I want to start by saying I'm pretty Catholic. I converted from like street Baptist to Catholicism, so kind of opposite. But I don't. I appreciate atheists. I don't have a problem with atheists, and this is like anything I say ever is not like or on here. It's not. My goal isn't to like hook people into Catholicism, but it's also my viewpoint. And I say that because I was just talking to people, a bunch of guys, a lot of men. It's a lot of men after Mass yesterday. And they're all our age, and they're all like, I should have between 4 and 15 kids. And I think there are a lot of stories like that. There's, obviously with Catholicism, you're going to have like, oh yeah, I'm a 15th generation Catholic. Yeah. But, I go, anytime I travel, I'll try to go to Mass, even if it's daily Mass or Sunday Mass. And, man, the churches are full. That was something that we had heard for a while, and I think just assumed that was still the case. But there are like 80 converts in the, because it's like a 9-month program to convert to Catholicism. It's really booming, and on like a rainy, boring Sunday, it's like packed. So I agree. I think there's and I don't. There's a sort of reversion to like tradition that happens when things get a little too chaotic. I think we can all handle some chaos. I think we sort of need some chaos. But yeah, it's been interesting. And I'm glad you went with that conclusion of piety from the premises of information. Because it's funny, even, I am this Catholic and I just gave that answer. Like the guys that I read and have read who talk about information in this like inundation of information, this not unstoppable thing, or like what's his name, John Baudelaire, the postmodernist. He talks about information a lot, and Byung-Chul Han, or the German Korean philosopher, talks about it a lot. And they always talk about it from information as like something that like liberates us by drowning us, and the imagery is always pretty dark, and it can be very dark sometimes, and sometimes so dark that there's no solution. So I think it's nice to have a solution, whatever it is. I like that. I like that conclusion of yours.
Well, yeah, that's my guess, right? But
I think
if
it's
I
right.
were to guess in the next 10 years, I think we will have, and it'll be interesting to know if it's this Pope, because this Pope has, is a little controversial.
Yeah,
but
he's amazing.
But I think that we're gonna see one of those like Pope tours of America where he just plays stadiums like he's Taylor Swift and just does 4 stadiums in a way that we haven't really seen in a while. So that would be my guess. It is strictly on like, I saw a YouTuber. I just did a thing about like gambling, like how gambling was wrong, and I was like, that's weird. Now gambling's cringe. That was not where I was brought up. It certainly was not. It was like, oh, that means you're kind of maybe you're numbers focused, or maybe you're dangerous, or maybe you're stupid, whatever. You're interesting if you're gambling. And this guy was like, no, it's dumb. You should not do it. And he's like a cool guy YouTuber. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Something's changing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's happening with a lot of stuff in society, like porn as well. And that's it's all, it's interesting how it's all interconnected.
Well, and part of it is that it's no longer an abstracted layer, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So all of these things,
like we've seen the results of it.
Well, no, follow me with this. Even geographically, weed, gambling, gay stuff, and pornography, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to. I'm not lumping gay stuff as a lifestyle in with those things, but just those were all examples of things that when we were growing up, they had geographical centers, right?
Yeah.
If you were gay, you would want to go to San Francisco or New York. If you're a gambler, you want to go to Las Vegas. If you were to do porn, you would go to Los Angeles. If blah, 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 blah. Like, now everything's everywhere.
Yeah.
A porn star isn't somebody who goes to the San Fernando Valley and shoots movies. A porn star is anybody you might know that is taking a picture of their butt and putting it up on OnlyFans, right? A gambler is not somebody who has a racing form at the dog track. Like, now a gambler is anybody with a phone in various different states. Same thing with weed. Weed was something that like very much had cultural connotations to like San Francisco or to New York. And now weed is just everywhere. Like, it is not just where the hippies are. It's where everybody is.
Oh, it's legal here in Oklahoma. Like,
yeah, exactly. Which was the kind of place where you would never be legal before. Which, by the way, that would always be my argument if I was running a weed legalization thing here in Texas. It's just it would just be one word: Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, they have it and we don't. Like there's nothing more insulting for a Texan than Oklahoma having a thing that a Texan doesn't.
That'll do it, man. Yeah. No, I don't understand why. I mean, well, I know that in Oklahoma that like the process is different. Like a petition is like you can if you get enough signatures, you can get the vote.
You can do a state ballot, and they were smart with the way that they did it, which was to make it an agriculture push. I I like Oklahoma's model more than I like many other states' model, although I think that they probably went a little bit too laissez-faire to the point where like the Chinese government was just buying land and growing massive amounts of weed. You're like, well, maybe we should have a few
little
laws.
bit of regulation, yeah.
A little bit, just a smidge. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go if you want to support the program, get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, including these weeks, Christmas week and New Year's week, where we're only doing 1 episode per week, because that means you guys also get the bonus episodes. Those are still happening, which is great. I want to thank everybody who got PX3 as a gift for their friends and family over the last few days. It has been heartening to see all the new friendly faces. I will also say that it was so enjoyable doing those videos for you guys that we're going to keep it going. You have a friend, birthday, something like that. I don't expect that we're going to get them all that often, but just so you know, if you buy PX3 as a gift for your friend, lover, loved one, long lost frenemy, whoever, I will do a little video. It's usually about a minute. Just me talking them through what the show's going to be about and gives them a little welcome. I think it's fun. Anyway, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Since this is an evergreen episode, we're not going to do news. So, although the South Korean people just impeached their president again. So there's that. Back to Kevin. All right, May. The Iranian president died. The Iranian president Ibrahim Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash on May 20th. It is one of many, many, many things that happened in the Middle East this year. Probably the most turbulent year of the Middle East in when? When do you remember it being this violent and bloody?
That's quite a statement, too. Yeah, I don't know. The last time there was a major war there.
I would have to say it was probably around 99, 2000.
Yeah.
And that might just be my own bias, because that was like as I was beginning to become a news junkie and, you know.
More so than like post 9/11?
Well, I became a news junkie through the like Lewinsky thing. That's when I first became obsessed with news.
Interesting.
Because, yeah. Or politics specifically. But then I found Drudge Report, and Drudge Report was something that was very hyper focused on Israel. Like Drudge Report would throw up a gif of a siren if there was a market bombing or something like that in Israel. And so, especially as I went through high school, went to college, I'm working in newspaper now, and so I'm up late to try to write on deadline. If, you know, at that era, very much an aughts coded moment, there was some screen somewhere had Drudge Report up, because in a pre-smartphone era, in a pre-push notification era, there was one dude on South Beach that was staying up and updating his website 24 hours a day, right? And so you would just know a news story was breaking if it was up on Drudge Report. He was faster and looser with his standards than anybody else, so the news would always come faster. And so I remember very much that intifada becoming, you know, a very big thing. And then also, you know, this was at the time where, like, dude, Bill Clinton hates Yasser Arafat so bad, and he hates him. He was just like 2 weeks ago, he was like just talking wild stuff about Yasser Arafat.
Still going.
Oh, because he hated him then, like, because that was Bill Clinton's big thing. He was like, all right, look, I had a good domestic agenda. I was largely popular. Then I had this Lewinsky thing, and it just totally jacked up my entire second term. I'm going to be forever tarred by that. I need one big thing. And he really thought he had a Middle East peace plan in the bag, and he has been consistent on this, and I have followed his comments on this. He said it then, he said it in the middle, he says it now. Yasser Arafat screwed that deal. That he had agreement by the Israelis. It was Yasser Arafat who would not go forward with that deal. But that's probably the time that I remember it the most being that violent.
Yeah.
And then past that, things have had their flare-ups, and then they flare down, but not for a year plus in the way that it is now.
Yeah, it would be a year plus because it was the Hamas attacks on Israel was like
October 7th. So
October 7th,
we are into our second year. Yeah.
2 years before. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get much bloodier than that.
But also it spread.
It does,
right? It spread. It wasn't only just a pummeling of Gaza, because versions of that has happened before, but not like anything that we've seen recently. But then to extend to Lebanon, but then to extend to attacks within Iran. We just saw last night, Syria is now in flux, and the Israelis exploded a munitions depot.
Bless you.
But yeah, it's if we look back on this year, I don't know if without mentioning American politics, if you can say that what is happening in the Middle East wasn't the biggest news story in the world. I mean, it's probably had the biggest impact.
Yeah, I'd say if it had been a non-presidential election year, and a non-presidential election year that wasn't this presidential cycle, it would probably have made more traction or gained more traction.
All right. June 6th, the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which took place in the UK and France. The big ceremony was in France. And I bring it up because, obviously, big momentous occasion, the defining moment of a Western alliance of American-led superpowers that, impose their will on another alliance of superpowers. But also, it was a pretty important moment in various different domestic politics. In the UK, there was a kerfuffle because then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak left the D-Day memorial early so he could campaign, which was not looked at as positive.
And then campaigning.
And then it was President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., who was thought to maybe be sleeping. Did he poop himself? Was he fully there? It was at that, I believe it was at the D-Day memorial, that he was asked outright by David Muir of ABC News whether or not he would pardon his son. He said a flat no.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
Obviously, that went the other direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, it turned out to be kind of a big gathering for many different reasons.
Yeah, no, I remember that pretty well. Yeah. Oh man, the optics on that were just so bad. I mean, whether or not he did Duke, it's like he took the toddler stance, and he was like, it looked like he was warming up. But he's like still campaigning at this point.
Oh yeah,
in June, because that was the debate was August or July.
Yes. I believe at that point he had challenged Trump to the debate, and Trump had accepted.
Gotcha.
So Trump was trying to bait them into debate, like he was bringing the empty podium for rallies and saying anytime, anywhere. And then Biden was like, all right, here we go. Like, I'm going to challenge you. And it's like, dude, things 5 minutes before disaster, which, by the way, I still have. I bought the merch because it was one of the biggest mistakes ever in American political history. They were selling merch for it because at the time, Trump was
Biden merch.
Yeah,
Or
Biden
Trump
merch.
Okay.
No. Biden sold T-shirts saying free on Wednesdays because Trump's legal schedule at the time, he was in court in New York and he only had Wednesdays free. And so it was Biden trolling Trump to be like, "Oh, I hear you're free on Wednesdays." And so I bought 2 T-shirts just because you rarely get to buy T-shirts for like one of the biggest mistakes in political history that like ended his career. It ended his political career right there. He didn't even get to election day.
So this is something. This sort of opens up something that you do so well that I think everybody should do. Like, you read all of the media. I mean, you watch the Sunday shows.
Do my best.
Yeah. Oh, and international media, and this is the thing that you do that's really impressive about it. You like read conservative media and you give it a shot. You really like, and you'll when they make a good point, you'll say they made a good point. So my question is, I'm pretty embedded in conservative media. So the whole D-Day situation was like huge. It was very loud in conservative media.
Yes.
But what was it? I know it wasn't equally as loud in the rest of the media, but was it? Did that story catch on at all?
Oh yeah. Well, remember
okay, so that was a big story.
It was just the drumbeat of. It was a great conservative media story because it matches with conservative media's original ethos, which is they're lying to you. We will tell you the truth, right?
Yes.
Like if you want to understand American conservative media, you have to understand that they will, no matter how big they get, no matter how much money is made, no matter how culturally definitional they are, the general, like, original ethos is we are small, they are big. Yep. They are lying, we are truth tellers. That's it. That's Fox News. That's Rush Limbaugh. That's The Blaze. That's everything that has come out of the conservative media ecosystem is predicated on the idea that everybody who runs mainstream media is liberal. They've always been liberal. Never let them believe that they are telling you exactly what is happening. We will. Yes. We're not just a counterbalance. We are there. And so it's like when you have Joe Biden ambling around and doing weird stuff, like, and then the press secretary is like, "Oh, it's cheap fakes." That's like catnip. Now all of a sudden, you know, the conservative media ecosystem is just having the greatest time because they're like they are like, it's happening right now. It's happening right now.
Yeah. No, Biden. Biden was pretty easy pickings on that front. It was pretty. Those are the Biden years were for conservative media were very frustrating for a lot of people on a personal level, but as for a profession, he made it pretty easy most of the time, and the sort of like. Lack of however it happened, the lack of coverage from the media, critical coverage, made it very easy to say they're not telling you the truth. Yeah. They're either lying, they might be lying, they're probably lying, and they're at least not telling you the truth. Well, watch this.
And that's the other thing is like the Democrats right now just have such a fractured relationship with middle of the road America because nobody ever fell on the sword, right? Even though Biden left, it's like the politically minded people were like, "Oh my God, we're going to lose so many Senate seats. We're going to lose so many House seats. Biden needs to go away." But then it was like nobody did the human thing. Like Corinne Jean-Pierre didn't resign and say, "Hey, look, I don't think that you can trust me when I told you that everything was going great, and it obviously wasn't going great. So I'm going to let somebody else take this job. Like, there was no moment of this wasn't good. This is bad. You guys deserve better. It was just, no, Joe Biden's going to be the next president. He's a great president. Joe Biden's gone. He's still a great president.
He would have been a bad president.
But yeah, there wasn't any kind of acknowledgement, and that's I think a problem. All right, we gotta move along a little faster. Senator Bob Menendez convicted in July.
Menendez was
The gold bars.
Is he Florida?
Yeah. No, New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yes, where usually if you're in New Jersey, you're only 10 years away from being from Florida. So at any moment.
What was I don't remember this one. What was his?
So this was, he essentially was getting money from the Egyptians, and he was like, I think he was leading
Democrat or Republican?
Democrat.
Democrat,
Yeah.
okay.
Democrat, yeah. It would have been a bigger story if he were Republican.
That's always fascinating too.
All right, I'm going to skip August here.
Okay.
Because I do want to talk about one thing in length before we bring it on home.
I love this.
And that is, this was the year. This is hard for me to say, Kevin. This was the year that Ye fell off.
Yeah.
2024. It was there. There had been a lot of warning signs. There'd been a lot of plastering. There'd been a lot of duct tape. There'd been a lot of cringeworthy moments. A lot of but he did two things that you can't do if you're Kanye West. He released an absolute. Well, he released one album that was okay, and then he released another one that was just absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
And then he dared to try to insert himself into the biggest music story of the year, which was Kendrick Lamar versus Drake. And it was forgettable. And it's like, well, that's the one thing that you can't be. Even if you're out on Alex Jones, if you're making Alex Jones cringe, like, at the very least, you got to be noteworthy. You got to be that dude. And not only at the end of it was his contribution forgettable, he just kind of grafted on, but he didn't even say anything as mean as Kendrick, and so it's like, okay, well, I guess Kanye now is just, he's going to do his concerts out in China for however much money. But I don't know. I don't know where the guy comes out on the other side of it. But this was the year where it's like nobody, even hardcore Kanye West stans like us, could make the argument that things were going good.
That was tough, man. That was tough because it was like watching your favorite athlete who has done incredible, whatever sport you want to make the metaphor, do these incredible, impressive athletic feats, come into the game late in the game and pull a hamstring, and meanwhile you got these younger players who are just pure
flying,
magic, doing something else. And even Drake was more a part of the situation. It was strange to see Drake last longer in the fight than Kanye did, and he lost that fight. He got pummeled. He's still gonna get pummeled. The pummeling is going to go to the Super Bowl.
He lost bad, he's suing.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Oh, no, you heard about this? Yeah, he's suing. He's suing his. So him and Kendrick technically have the same record label, which is not particularly strange because there's only 3 of them. But he's suing them because he's like, oh, you guys use bots to promote him, and it was like, how do you think you've been on top for 20 years, dude?
Yeah. Oh, that's a bad tactic. I feel like that's pretty universally known as a bad thing, a bad way to do it.
Well, you don't lose a rap battle and then sue.
Oh man, that's bad. I didn't even know about that. Yeah, but that was like so their generation is sort of like it's weird. It's sad to watch our like idols, these guys, because I remember seeing Drake in Houston right after Best I Ever Had.
Yeah.
Little Wayne pulled him out, and he still had the cast. Drake had the cast on.
Yeah.
And it was like everybody was there to see Drake.
Yes.
And it was like, and he just did. I think he did Best I Ever Had like twice. You know.
Yeah.
But it was like everybody walked out after that. And now to see him just like, just like, stop shoving Grandpa. Grandpa can't do it anymore.
I know.
Like,
I know. And his output has been booty for a minute too.
For a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not great. Reggaeton is not doesn't suit him very well.
Well, no, the reggaeton stuff was all right, and then he just like, I don't know. There's like this whole other conversation about how hip hop has just become so dominant that you can just make, like, Drake succeeded by chasing trends. And there's a great like 3-hour long YouTube video by this dude FD Signifier, but he talked about how music was kind of irreparably damaged when hip hop was irreparably damaged when Drake lost so thoroughly to Pusha T, and then 2 weeks later put out a song called Tootsie Slide, which was like a TikTok dance, and it succeeded. And so, you know, like the FD Signifier's
I love that
point,
song, by the way.
Yeah. Left foot up, right foot slide. Like,
Tootsie Slide. Yeah. That was like that went viral.
It's huge, right? And so that was FD Signifier's point, is that it's like, oh, there were no consequences. He was too big to fail. He got the
in the Pusha T fight. There were no.
Well, he lost so bad to Pusha T. Usually that means that as an artist, you got to go away for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
No. 2 weeks later, left foot right, left foot slide. Like, that was it. And it was like, so he's just kind of going to be there forever. Yeah. And it took Kendrick calling him a pedophile for people to be like, whoa,
man.
Wow. All right, Jimmy Carter turns 100 in October.
Yeah.
Oh, but I think we skipped September.
September was a big one. Do you have Diddy on the Diddy and Jay-Z on there by chance?
Well, sure. Yeah, we can do it now.
Okay. Yeah, I have a spicy take on that. Potentially spicy.
Go.
So, yeah, Diddy list. Cash Patel's talking about just like putting it out in day one.
Yeah.
Which that's a whole other conversation. But I've been fascinated with this idea that like hip hop in general is sort of, you know, it's been on the top. It's been wearing the crown for I think about as long as a musical genre does since the birth of recorded music. Yeah. And that's not very long. So, you know, our data points are, you know, we don't really have that many. You know, we've got rock and roll is the one that I think I'm looking at the most because that's the most recent.
Popular music through media, through mass media. Yeah.
Exactly. Popular music and the like predominant genre of popular music by a million different metrics like album sales and all that, popularity. So I think this the Diddy list might be the like nail in the coffin for the genre.
I don't know if it's look. A lot of these things happen for different reasons. There's artistic reasons. There's non-artistic reasons. I mean, usually no genre declines because it's bad. It's that other genres are more popular for various different reasons, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about hip hop is that right now it is in a very strange place because there's no definitional story to it. Like, I'll put it this way. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg just put out an album called Missionary. It is literally there to license songs to commercials, movies,
Yeah.
video games. It is not what Doggy Style was. It's obviously a play on Doggy Style Missionary, right? Doggy Style, when I listened to it in 1994, it expanded my brain. It's one of the most important albums in my lifetime because it was the closest thing that I got in retrospect to like when people describe like Lenny Bruce, the first time they heard Lenny Bruce or something, or, you know, it's like, oh my God, like now the world is just bigger. I didn't know that you could be that dirty. I didn't know that you could be that melodic. I didn't know that you could be any of these different things. This is like every song is sampling another song. None of it particularly feels organic or interesting, but yet it will probably make $1 billion. Like if you combine the fact that it's basically a licensing opportunity where now everybody has the ability to sign on to say, oh, do you want this song with Snoop Dogg and Sting to be the opening song for your movie? Like, yes, we would like Tom Holland to be jumping out of an airplane while this song plays. But that's hip hop now at the same time that you have a lot of like the SoundCloud rapper generation has kind of like come and gone a little bit. And then you have Kendrick Lamar, who's somewhere in the middle, who's like making really good music at the peak of his powers, peak of his popularity. But it's everything right now, which means it's not what it used to be. It's not what it was in the 90s or the 80s where it was like, I never thought that hip hop could take it this far, right? Where that's the thing. It's like, oh, we're climbing. I made it out of the neighborhood. I made it into the big apartment. I make $1 million. Now screw $1 million. Like I made a $1 billion. Screw $1 billion. I'm going to talk about how I had sex with a Rothschild. Screw having sex with a Rothschild. Like there's just like there's this element of braggadocio that's kind of hit its apex. Yeah. And now it's sort of everywhere, which means it's nothing. If it's everything, it's nothing. And so I don't know if anything's ever going to replace it, because I don't think that the machinery is there to have it be replaced. I mean, if anything, the thing that has replaced it in terms of cultural dominance has been pop singer girlies. Like, you know, you have your Taylor Swift, your Sabrina Carpenters, your Charlie XCXs, and all that. Like that's kind of become their center stage now.
So my album of the year, can I throw this in there?
Show it in there. Yeah.
Fontaine's DC, great album. I'm just like, I've been obsessed with it this year.
Awesome.
A lot of good albums came out this year, and not as many of them were hip hop as usual. But yeah, a lot of singer-songwriter women who are singer-songwriters. A lot of it really good stuff.
I'm into it. I'll tell you what, I don't know how much I can talk about it, but there's a new album by my friend Carlson, who's in a band called the Calistyle Boys, that I think is coming out next year. I know it's coming out next year. I don't know when it's coming out next year. It like made me excited about music again in a way that I had not been excited about music in like a while. I don't know. I might just send it to you, but
yes, please send that.
It's awesome, and like it's more of like a hardcore album, but
I love
a hardcore metal album. But like they're so musical, they're so great. It's
send that to me, dude.
Obviously, November the election happens. Israel Hezbollah ceasefire, and then we're here in December. But we do have to wrap it up here. Now, Mr. Kevin Ryan, what have you learned this year? Do you have any big lessons?
That's a good question. I feel like it was a very transformative year for everybody. A lot of like lessons that I found. It's cool that, you know, I've been a writer for 15 years now in various forms.
That's rad.
It's been the first like 10 years where it was like, you know, there was nothing in it.
Feel it around.
It's like, I want to be a novelist. Oh, no, let's do short stories. Let's do poetry. And then, okay, I can actually make money as a journalist. But it's cool to like still it's not cool on the failure aspect. There's still so much failure. There's so much failure, dude. And then that's what I've learned. I think this year is like the failure is always there, but it's been cool to like, because when you become a professional writer, you run out of your tricks. All the tricks you've learned over that 10-year period, you run out of them pretty quickly. And then you get to like officially test your mettle of like. Well,
that's just the beginning. That's the beginning of the process.
That's it right there. And you became a dad this year. Congratulations, man.
I did.
That might be one of my favorite news events of the entire year.
It was great. It was an amazing moment. We were talking because we were going to go do the Jake Paul Tyson fight when it was happening in the summer. And I was like, hey, just so you know, it's going to have that'll be like the last big thing that I would do right before. And I sent you the ultrasound, and you were like probably the most animated reaction that we got throughout the entire process. It was so great to tell you.
Oh, that was so beautiful. I remember that every moment, every word of that conversation was just, I'm so happy for you, dude. You're like, you've always been excellent as long as I've known you, and you've always impressed me. And now you're a dad, dude, and that's just so great. I can't wait to, come down and meet your daughter and
I know.
Hang out with you guys. And it's just, these like year-end conversations are beautiful for so many reasons. And one of them is that it's like another year of you and me having, great conversations.
Just making our way. Kevin Ryan, where can people find you?
Twitter, or just do the website. The website's probably the best. KevinRyan.us, and then you can link out to my social, which
all
I'm
the other
social.
places. Yeah.
Dude, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, dude. And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, brought to you by Dog and Pony Show Audio here in Austin, Texas. It was written and hosted by myself, Justin Robert Young. Big thank you, as we always do, to the one and only Kevin Ryan, smoking a stove out in the Oklahoma suburban wilderness. You love to see it. And I would like to thank all of you guys for being a part of the team. I'll get into some of the sappy stuff here at the end. Before we do that, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. That's where you send me any and all emails. If you want to follow the show on social media, it is Justin R. Young on TikTok, Instagram, and X. YouTube is Politics. This is the first year that we've done video for the whole year, so we are very, very excited to have done that. PayPal.me/payjury, Justin-Young, PayPal.me/jury is my PayPal address. Justin-Young-20 is my Venmo. Cash App is PX3Cash. If you think I deserve an end of the year bonus, go ahead and kick me a little coin. And you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. Again, that is 153184. Post Office Box, Austin, Texas, 78715. Lifeblood of the show is folks who support us on Substack. That was another big change this year. Head on over there right now for $12 a month. That's $3 a week. You get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Rain or shine, even in the holiday months. I'm still doing something. So thank you. And of course, the biggest deal, the best deal that we got, the best deal to be dealt is the annual. That's $99, less than $100 for over 150 episodes of the program in a calendar year. Friends, grinding all my life. That's what I'm up to when it comes to my service to you. All right, let's get mushy, let's get gushy, let's get ushy. The panel show that I do with Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney, we had a thing a year ago. And we were asking for each other for like mantras that we were bringing in to 2024. And they got to me, And I said survival. Now, I knew that we would have a big, contentious presidential race. I'm ready for that. I would do those for free. You have to pay me for like this year coming up, where I actually have to work. But I knew it was going to be, trying. And it's expensive because, I'm my own production company. So I'm the one that has to foot the bill to fly me and put me up wherever I need to go. But what they didn't know is that my wife was pregnant. And that all of that was going to happen as I became a father for the first time. And lo, that happened. As I speak right now, my beautiful little angelic daughter is refusing to take a nap unless she is either contacted with myself or her mother, which is frustrating. It'd be a lot more frustrating if she weren't so cute. And then on top of that, we made the switch to Substack, which is the first time that I have thrown myself backwards onto you, the audience, in a while. I haven't done something like that in a minute. It was very, very scary. And in a lot of ways, I was kind of glad that there was already a lot of other really scary things that were happening, because at the very least, that one didn't stick out. I'm very glad we did it when we did it. And we have been made whole. I'm going to write a whole big write-up for it. But just know that you guys always mean the world to me. None of this happens without the listeners to this show specifically. Because as much as I love doing every other show that I do, I love doing Great Night with Brian Brushwood. I love doing World's Greatest Con with Brian. I love doing We're Not Wrong with Jen and Heaton. I love doing Daily Tech News Show with Tom and Sarah and everybody else with that crew. Financially, this is what keeps the wheels turning. So thank you. Thank you. I'm one to try to project gratitude to those who do me a solid. You guys enjoying this show and spreading the word is the lifeblood. And with that, I will say I have survived. Oh, no, not I. I will survive. And indeed, in another few days, that will have already been in past tense. 2025 is going to be a really fun year, because if year 4 of our political lunar calendar is obviously the most hectic, this is where the phoenix blazes at its most spectacular. Year 1 is when we can get experimental. And I am very much looking forward to experimenting with a few different things, including for sure a 3rd season of a podcast that has not come out in a couple of years. We'll see. Till then, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss all 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.